I wanted to bring today's episode to the podcast talking about estrogen dominance. Although we do deal with low AMH, high FSH, premature ovarian insufficiency, and or diminished ovarian reserve, we sometimes see where you can still have estrogen dominance, because typically we think of estrogen dominance more with, endometriosis or fibroids or PCOS, but it can still be the case with these other diagnoses that we're working with, essentially estrogen and progesterone out of balance. So today, super deep dive into estrogen dominance with some takeaways so you can figure out how to address this and really address those underlying healing opportunities. Excited for you to listen to today's episode. Hey there, I'm Sarah Clark, founder of Fab Fertile and your host. I believe the functional approach is the first step for anyone struggling with infertility, and my aim is to help you get pregnant naturally. Today, I'm welcoming Kate Vazquez to the podcast, and we're digging into estrogen dominance and why it matters when you're trying to conceive. Kate Vazquez is a functional medicine physician assistant, estrogen dominance expert, and founder of Radiant Health and author, and she loves empowering women to reclaim their health and vitality and helping them create a life of design that they love living. She is the author of the book Estrogen Is A Bitch. Definitely check out that book, and bringing awareness with estrogen dominance. So excited for you to listen to today's episode. Thanks so much for listening. And I'm so thankful that you're here. Make sure you hit subscribe. And if you know someone else who's on the fertility journey, please share this podcast with them. Take care. Hey, Kate, excited to have you on the podcast.
Hi, Sarah. I'm so excited to be here with you today. I'm just so honored and blessed.
Awesome. Great. So can you share your journey and really how you came to do this work?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely been a fun journey to get me to this place where I'm at now. But I am a physician assistant, and before I jumped into functional medicine, at the time I initially started off in cardiology, then jumped over into urgent care, did a little bit of ER, but mostly was in urgent care because I like the quick fix. I like to help people get better in the moment because when we get into medicine, we want to help people feel better, and that's where I felt I could do that best. But over time, it started to become apparent that I really wasn't helping people. Like I kept seeing the same people over and over again, and they were asking me, why am I getting sick all the time? And why are these medications not helping? And I wanted to give them the right answer, but I didn't know how to answer them. I really didn't know why. I'm like, I learned like, this is how we treat certain things and get them out the door and back to their primary, to the specialist. But, it started bothering me because I'm like, I really wanted to help them, but it wasn't the right place to help them either. Cause you're in urgent care, you're seeing people like every 5 minutes, and I've always been passionate about health and fitness and nutrition. But when we're learning the medical model, we get a little bit of education around it, but we just don't have that time to really talk to our patients about that, especially in urgent care or even in primary care medicine, same thing, and I believe that it was a huge component of our health, but I wasn't able to do that. And one day I had come across Dr. Mark Hyman, and I was listening to him talk about functional medicine, like what functional medicine is, which is the medicine of why, not the medicine of what, and looking at all the body systems and how they're all integrated and playing a role in each other. And I thought this was amazing. I'm like, why haven't I heard of this before? Mm-hmm. And it was like a light bulb went off for the first time in my life. I felt like there was hope. And I realized like, this is how I want to practice medicine. This is it. And so I dove in and learned more about functional medicine. I got my certification through the Institute for Functional Medicine. And at the same time, I decided to take a huge leap of faith and start my own practice at the same time. Because like once your eyes are opened, you want to figure out how can you do this? And you don't really want to go back to what you were doing before. So I started my own practice, and it was crazy because at the same time, I also had my own health issues, which I didn't really think were a big deal. They were just, something I just like learned to live with, and they weren't really debilitating, but they were. Now that I think about it, now that I've healed my body, I'm like, they were kind of actually debilitating because I started having migraines since I was a child. And then as I went through puberty, developed acne. And then in my 20s, had a lot of constipation and bloating and anxiety. And all these symptoms were just starting to compound on each other the older I got. And I realized like, at the time, I just thought that, this is what happens to our bodies. And my family had a lot of GI issues. So because of them, I was like prone to them too. And, we tend to think like this is our fate, but I was just like, no, I don't want this to be my fate. Like, I don't want to keep suffering anymore. And I also had a lot of neck pain at the time, which was just from a lot of tension in my neck and my spinal cord, which was out of alignment. And I didn't realize at the time that I had chronic neck pain. And so when I learned about functional medicine and learned about all the systems, how they were affecting each other, I started working on healing my body first, taking care of my gut health, which was so huge, and learning how to manage the anxiety because I'm like type A personality, high achiever, and had a lot of stress in my life. And I had to learn how to manage it because when you go to a regular practitioner, Western medicine, all they want to do is prescribe pill, another pill, another pill. And I don't want to take any pills. And so through functional medicine, I was able to heal my body, but at the time I was still on birth control. So a lot of things definitely significantly improved, but it wasn't until a couple years ago when I finally came off the birth control, because learning about all the impacts that it has on the body long-term, I realized I need to get off of it, especially as I start to prepare my body in the next like 3-5 years for pregnancy. And also hearing a lot of stories too about family and friends and coworkers, right when they'd come off the birth control pill, they would get pregnant, but then they would miscarry. And so that concerned me. And I'm like, I want to make sure that I'm preparing my body, the hormones are in balance for when that time comes. And so when I came off the birth control, my hormones went crazy. And it's actually surprised me because I'm like, I did a lot of the work. I cleaned up my diet. I worked on healing my gut. I managed the stress and anxiety, cleaned up all the products I was using in my home. So I was like, what is going on with my body? And for the first time in my life, I was having really irregular periods or really long cycles, like 30 to 36 days. And I was having some PMS cramps, some menstrual cramps, and even breast tenderness, which I never had before. And I even started gaining a little bit of weight in my butt, hips, and thighs. And I've always been a pretty, I've never really been overweight. I've always been like a pretty athletic built kind of body. And so when I started gaining weight, I'm like, whoa, what's going on, And so I started doing the testing and discovered that my hormones were out of balance. And that was because I had been on birth control for over 15 years, and it had suppressed my own ability to produce these hormones. And so I had to do a lot of work in helping to support the metabolism of the estrogens, because I was taking synthetic estrogen for so long, and also naturally support the production of progesterone again. And then testosterone too was really, really low. And so I had to help boost testosterone as well. And so through that process and balancing out my hormones, I started noticing similar patterns in my clients as well. And so I started working with them, balancing out their hormones, because what I discovered was that my clients had estrogen dominance, which is basically an imbalance of estrogen in ratio to progesterone. And by doing that, I was able to help them really significantly improve their symptoms and quality of life as well. And so that basically led me on this journey, going from functional medicine to really narrowing down my niche into really helping women balance out their hormones, especially supporting estrogen metabolism and progesterone if it's low, and just making sure everything and all the body systems are in balance to really improve the quality of life.
No, I love that. I find, most people that come to do this work, there's their own personal journey. And, like you're saying, I've done many podcast episodes on migraines, acne, constipation, chronic stress. Interesting. Saying with me, I used to have this like freaking neck pain that I could still feel it. Like if things I'll get like a little ball right up here.
Yeah.
Now I have a chiropractor. I can see when I'm like, got my shoulders up to my ears and kind of like, okay, wait a minute. It's interesting with the stress piece. Probably for the last 3 or 4 months, I haven't meditated at all. I'm like, okay, Sarah, this is enough. Like you've got to get back to, so literally this week, I'm like, okay, I'm back on it. And even today I was like, oh, I don't have time. I got this podcast interview coming. Nope. I got the meditation in between that. So
yeah,
interesting
absolutely.
for you all, because it was interesting yesterday, because we're both in this, I got this sun in my place. We're both in the same mastermind. At the end, the speaker of the mastermind, she was talking about, you have your own business, and then why are you running around doing all these things? You have your own business, and not everyone has this not luxury, but you're in charge of your own schedule. But I somehow lost track of that and was like stuck working 12 hours a day. I'm like, okay, I can take charge of this. I think a lot of times things just run together and people kind of, especially if you're like type A, go, go, go. And then next thing you know, all you're doing is working all day long. And then that's not serving anyone or especially yourself. So then chronic disease and all sorts of other things go on. But yeah, definitely with the estrogen dominance, and we're going to get into this. So we support couples with low AMH and high FSH, diminished ovarian reserve, and premature ovarian insufficiency. And even with that, you can still have estrogen dominance. People kind of think, well, my estrogen is like super low, but in relation to progesterone, it can still be high. And so therefore you can still have some of these symptoms. So let's dig into, so we talked about kind of estrogen dominance, but really, so what are some of the symptoms that you could have with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so correct. Just because estrogen may seem like it's imbalanced, that's when you look at that progesterone level, especially in the luteal phase, because that's the biggest thing that gets missed is that practitioners aren't looking at hormones during a specific time of the cycle. And you want to look during this luteal phase, which is the second half of the menstrual cycle. And a lot of the major big symptoms of estrogen dominance, I call them the 5 telltale signs, and that's irregular periods. So yes, there's irregular periods with disorders such as like PCOS, which when we look at PCOS, it's high in androgens like testosterone, DHEA, but there's also high estrogens associated with that. And that's because if there's high or imbalanced estrogen, it actually can delay or prevent ovulation as well, not just the androgens and insulin resistant component of PCOS. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have PCOS. It's a lot of women that don't have PCOS can have those irregular periods. Like I don't have PCOS, but when I came off the birth control, my estrogens were imbalanced and I started having those irregular cycles because of that. And estrogen also thickens up the endometrial lining, especially during the follicular phase. And so the second telltale sign is heavy bleeding. So if there's imbalanced or excess estrogen in the body, women will have a really, really thick endometrium, thicker than normal. And so when it comes time to having their period, they're going to have those heavier bleeds and sometimes even experience clotting with that. So that's definitely the second telltale sign. Excess imbalanced estrogen can also cause those severe PMS menstrual cramps. And so that's because estrogen does release a little bit of prostaglandins, and prostaglandins are these chemicals that increase inflammation, also causes that uterus to contract when we have our period. But when there's a lot of estrogen present or imbalanced estrogen, that will cause even more prostaglandins to be released as well. So that's what causes those really painful menstrual cramps. And then with the PMS symptoms, so PMS symptoms, including the menstrual cramps, but also anxiety, insomnia, mood swings, that's also due to low progesterone levels as well. So if you have that imbalanced estrogen, but then also low progesterone levels, that's contributing to those PMS symptoms. So that's the third telltale sign of estrogen dominance. The fourth sign is breast tenderness. And that's because estrogen is responsible for the development of our breasts, especially when we go through puberty. But when there is excess or imbalanced estrogen, it causes that breast tissue to swell even more. And that's why I was experiencing that, for the first time when I came off birth control, and especially right that week before you start your period. So that's definitely a fourth sign. And then the fifth sign is excess weight gain in the butt, hips, and thighs. And that's because when we go through puberty, normally women do deposit some fat in the butt, hips, and thighs, just because estrogen does give us those curves. But when women start gaining more weight, and that's where it goes, the butt, hips, and thighs, that's probably the biggest sign of them all of estrogen dominance. And so those are the 5 top signs. And I tell women, usually if you have like 2 or 3 of those symptoms, that's highly likely that you have estrogen dominance. But there are other symptoms too of estrogen dominance, which includes brain fog and fatigue. It also includes bloating. It also, you can have acne with that as well, low libido, even having trouble conceiving, infertility. And it also contributes to estrogen dominant disorders, which I already talked about, PCOS, but also there's endometriosis and uterine fibroids, fibrocystic breast disease, and even cancer too. So we're seeing a lot of imbalanced estrogen with breast cancer, or uterine or endometrial cancer, and not just those types of cancer, but also cancer in other type areas of the body, because there are estrogen receptors all over. So those that have thyroid cancer or lung or or intestinal cancer, because those estrogen receptors are present, there's a link that's associated with that as well.
Yeah, that's when we do the Dutch test too. You can see which pathway the estrogen's going down, and if it's going down that DNA damaging pathway, there's things we can do prevent. Even though you may have a history of cancer in your family, it doesn't mean you're destined to have that. There's things you can do. So for me, that's why the beauty of the functional approach of functional medicine. It's prevention, not like that pill for the ill.
Oh, of course.
Okay, so let's talk about, so how does estrogen become imbalanced in the first place? We talked a little bit about, and we'll get into this a little bit more with the pill, but what are some other ways it becomes imbalanced?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of ways that estrogen can become imbalanced. But the first thing I like to look at with everyone is what are you eating and how's the health of your gut? And so when it comes to food, there's a lot of processed foods and also foods that contain a lot of pesticides. Then there's also animal products that contain hormones. Thankfully, a lot of companies are transitioning and putting out better quality products. And, we're seeing meat and dairy that doesn't have any antibiotics and hormones in it, which is awesome, because back in the day, which I do believe this was probably one of the factors that contributed to the acne that I was experiencing, because I got on birth control to treat the acne, which helped. So that right there was a clue. It was a hormonal imbalance. But I think because I grew up in a country town consuming a lot of meat and dairy, it was just probably full of a lot of hormones. So that's the biggest thing that can definitely contribute. But also too, the pesticides that is found in a lot of the produce that we consume. So that's why it's important to focus on getting as much of the organic produce as you can to really reduce the toxic burden, those pesticides that you're being exposed to from your food. So looking at the food, the nutrition, also making sure that you're consuming a lot of cruciferous vegetables, because as you mentioned, I like to use the Dutch test as well to look at the different pathways. And so estrogen gets metabolized through the liver, through phase 1 and phase 2, and then through the phase 3, which is the intestines. And so we want to make sure that we're consuming enough cruciferous vegetables to really help support the first phase of estrogen metabolism, and also a lot of leafy greens, a lot of sources of folate, B12 to really help support phase 2. And then gut health is what I also mentioned that I like to look at too, because that's again, phase 3 of estrogen metabolism. So when people have issues with the gut, like I was experiencing, so if you're experiencing constipation and bloating, that right there is a huge sign. But keep in mind, not everyone will have symptoms of the gut. Not everyone will experience constipation, bloating, nausea, diarrhea, GI symptoms in general. And there still could be issues that are present. But in my case, it was definitely very clear that I had issues in my gut. And so I had to work on healing that. I actually had what's called dysbiosis. So we have the microbiome, which is trillions of microorganisms, including like bacteria, viruses, parasites, yeast, protozoa. We have all these organisms in the gut, and they should be all living in community together. But when there's an imbalance, that's called dysbiosis. And that's what I had. I had a really bad overgrowth of bacteria in my gut, something called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which explains the constipation and bloating that I was having, because those are the two symptoms of that. So really assessing the health of the gut. Is there an overgrowth of certain specific organisms like bacteria or yeast or, parasites that we have to go in and treat? How well are you digesting, food? Are you absorbing food as well? And just, and also the lining of the gut. What does that look like? My gut lining needed to be healed too, because of the migraines when I was younger and also very active, took a lot of Advil, and that definitely impacted the gut. Plus birth control too does impact that gut lining, that gut barrier. So really looking at the different aspects of the gut to really help heal that, because we do want to support estrogen metabolism. And going back to the Dutch test, actually, no, not the Dutch test, but when I look at a microbiome test, what I like to look at is a specific enzyme called beta-glucuronidase. So when there's a healthy gut, healthy microbiome, this enzyme beta-glucuronidase is supposed to be really, really low, because when estrogen goes through estrogen metabolism, phase 1 and phase 2, it gets converted from its active form to inactive form. Then it binds to bile, goes to the intestines, so that way it can go out the gut through our poop. But if that's not happening, if there's a lot of bad, bacteria or parasites or yeast, that dysbiosis that's present actually causes elevation of that beta glucuronidase. And then that actually turns that inactive form of estrogen back to its active form. And now the body thinks that estrogen is ready to go. So it gets reabsorbed. And now we have a lot more estrogen present than we should. And so it's really important that we're assessing the nutrition, the gut, but also making sure that those pathways are being supported. So that's another thing that I look at is the liver, to make sure that those pathways are open, that estrogen's being metabolized out, because we need to use estrogen, but also get rid of it and make sure that we're not, continuing to reabsorb it back into circulation. Another big thing that causes imbalance, what again was something that I was experiencing, was a lot of stress. And, which is the big thing. I do believe, like most people, this is a common issue, because who doesn't have stress nowadays? And stress comes in many different forms. We have physical, emotional, and even chemical, and there's just so many different forms of stress. And for me, I really had to learn like how to manage the stress. Like no one ever taught me how. And as I mentioned before, like I took Prozac, in fact, in physician assistant school, because that was probably the most intense and stressful time of my life, going through PA school, because it was like basically medical boot camp, going straight through for 2.5 years. And I took Prozac for the first 1.5 years because I thought it would help me to manage the stress, but no surprise, it didn't. The stress was still there, but it definitely numbed me. And I realized, like, once I got into my clinical rotations, I didn't want to take it anymore. I'm like, it obviously wasn't helping. And so once I finally got out of PA school, I started learning like yoga, meditation, deep breathing, all these different practices to really help calm my body down. And that made a huge difference. For the first time in my life, I felt that I could actually manage the stress. So whenever things would come my way, I could manage it a lot better. But the reason why stress impacts our hormones is because when our bodies are in that constant fight or flight mode, we're producing a lot of cortisol. And so when I did testing on my adrenals, my cortisol was like through the roof, and I was shocked. And I'm like, oh gosh, I need to do something about this, because there's a lot of studies that back it up that high cortisol levels causes inflammation, and the inflammation ends up leading to all these chronic disorders that a lot of people are experiencing. So I knew I needed to do something about it, but also when our bodies are in that fight or flight mode, it's not sending signals to our reproductive organs to produce our sex hormones, especially progesterone. So progesterone gets produced when we're in a calm state, that parasympathetic state, which is our rest and digest state, but when our bodies are in that fight or flight mode, we're not thinking about reproduction. We're thinking about survival. And so whether we're trying to get pregnant or not, the body doesn't care. It's just like, it's trying to survive and not produce the most important hormones, which is actually really important to maintain healthy hormonal balance. And progesterone is a really important hormone that doesn't get looked at and addressed, because it's our feel-good hormone. It's nature's natural Valium. It keeps us calm, happy, but it also helps with sleep. So when our bodies are stressed, we're less likely to produce those progesterone levels. And so when women have low progesterone levels, that will create an estrogen dominance effect, even if their estrogen levels are normal, like you were saying. And so that's really important to be aware of. And that's what I see in a lot of my clients too, is like, high stress, low progesterone levels. So let's work on supporting the adrenals, lowering that cortisol, but also helping to support progesterone naturally, so it's not creating such a big ratio between estrogen and progesterone, creating that imbalance. But second, stress is definitely a huge factor. And then toxins in our environment. Toxins are everywhere. And when I first heard about the environmental working group, I looked at a study that they had done, and they said that women use about 12 products per day and leave the house with 168 chemicals on their body. And when I read that statistic, it blew my mind. I was like, what? That's a lot. So I started looking at everything that I was using and counting up. I'm like, oh my gosh, am I using over 100 chemicals on my body? And it was just mind blowing to learn that. And so I started slowly swapping out the products that I was using, the shampoo, the soaps, the body washes, the detergent, all the hand soaps, even my cleaning supplies around the house, because all these toxins contain chemicals called xenoestrogens, which are foreign compounds that mimic estrogen, and they attach to estrogen receptors in the body. So when we're exposed to these chemicals, they're attaching to the estrogen receptor, and now the body thinks there's even more estrogen than there really is. So that's another thing. Like, women may have normal estrogen levels, but they're having estrogen dominant symptoms because of these toxins in their environment. And so that's why it's so important to be mindful of the things that you're using. Thankfully, nowadays, most companies are putting the ingredients on their bottles. But yeah, if you pick up a product to use on your body or in your home and it doesn't list the ingredients, I wouldn't even use it, because it's so important to be aware what these chemicals are. And if you can't read it or pronounce it, it's probably best to stay away from it. But thankfully, there are resources out there like the Environmental Working Group, where you can look up products that you're currently using to see how dirty they are. But I also like two apps. One is called Think Dirty, and the other one is called Yuka, Yuka. And those contain a barcode within the app. And so you can scan the products that you're currently using, everything on your body, in your home, and see what are clean and what are dirty, and start swapping out the dirty ones. And then when you're in the grocery store, start scanning the products to find better alternatives to swap them out for. So that's definitely a huge tip that you can do and start doing today to really reduce the toxic burden, in your home and in your body. And then another thing that a lot of people don't think of are histamines. So histamines can also play a role in causing estrogen dominance and imbalance in those estrogens, because there are a certain amount of people. What I realized is that when I was working with clients, some of the women were getting better with just working on the gut, managing stress, optimizing nutrients, reducing the toxins, supporting detoxification. But there was others that weren't getting better. And when I started to dive in a little bit deeper, I realized that a lot of these women were really sensitive to a lot of things in their environment. And one of the big clues is like, they didn't have sensitivities and allergies when they were in childhood, but as they got into adulthood, they started becoming really sensitive to things. And histamines can present as a lot of different things as well. So if you look at the list of symptoms associated with histamine intolerance, it's a long laundry list. So it's something to keep in the back of the mind. If someone's not getting better and they're working on the different areas, there might be a histamine intolerance as well. And basically what histamine intolerance is that there's an increase in histamine in the body, and it's not necessarily like an acute allergic reaction. So when we think histamines, we think acute allergy. So like if you eat something or you use a new lotion and all of a sudden you break out in a rash, that's immediate. But histamine intolerance is a little bit more delayed. That still can present as rash or congestion, sinus issues, but also like a lot of GI complaints, like bloating and gas as well. Also, anxiety is another symptom of histamine intolerance. Women too will complain of pain during ovulation. So when estrogens are imbalanced and you have those high histamines, it will cause that pain during ovulation, and also bad PMS symptoms as well. So definitely something to think about. And if the histamines are playing a role, it's really simple. You just start pulling out a lot of histamine foods, and you can definitely easily look up what are foods that either contain histamines or release histamines, and start pulling them out. And once I worked with my clients that had that subset of symptoms, and I discovered they had a histamine intolerance, by removing those histamines and supporting them on a couple natural antihistamine compounds, it was like a 180 switch from suffering to like significantly better. It was a game changer for them. They all the PMS symptoms resolved, the cramping, that pain during ovulation. So I was like, wow, I found the missing key. But yeah, it's definitely something that a lot of people don't think of, that can definitely be playing a role as well. So.
Awesome. Yeah. I thought all of that stuff is great. I love obviously the gut health piece. Like we see, I don't think anyone, dealing with these diagnoses like the low AMH and high FSH and diminished ovarian reserve and premature ovarian insufficiency would think, oh, I have a parasite or a fungal or bacteria infection. For me, diagnosed with premature ovarian insufficiency at 28, had both my kids with donor eggs. I had years later discovered the food sensitivities, the gut infections. I had parasites, bacterial infections, fungal infections, H. pylori, all of this. Yeah. And then really, but also that chronic stress piece too, like you talked about. And the personal care side of things, that's what we say to people right away, to start, not to throw it all out, because that can become overwhelming. We're like, oh my God, I gotta take everything in the cupboard, throw it out. It's like, as each thing expires, throw it in the garbage. We do want people to like move really quickly on the feminine hygiene, because that's like going near your vagina. So
yes.
move that out like right away. But the rest of the stuff, yeah. And I hadn't heard of that other app you had. So YUKA, the
yeah, Yuka, YUKA. Yeah.
okay, cool. Yeah, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, think Dirty and the Environmental Working Group too are like awesome resources to be, so you can see what the heck's that took me. I did the food right away. For some reason, the products, I don't know, because I tried a bunch of products, they didn't freaking work. It just ticked me off, drove me bananas, and it took me like years to find a products, skincare products and body care products. It didn't give me a rash that wasn't like crazy expensive, that then also worked. So that, for some reason that took me a long time, but the food thing was easy. I don't, when I look back, I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. Even the cleaning products took me for ages. I don't know why. It's interesting what we do as we're, if we're looking to change things, there's some resistance sometimes. We're like, oh my goodness, I don't want to do that. Whatever.
I mean, I must admit, not all the more natural products are good, like in terms of like actually work good. So yeah, sometimes it is like a little trial and error into finding the right products that actually work, but are still, better for your body. So it did take me some time to, especially like sunscreen. Like I was finding like a zinc-based sunscreen that wouldn't make me look like a ghost, because I'm already pale already. I'm pretty fair skinned. So I finally found one. It's I think it's called, it's in the US, but it's I think it's Naked Zinc is what it's called. Okay. That actually absorbs really well. Like, once I put it on, it absorbs really well. So I'm like, oh, thank goodness, I don't have to look like a ghost. And it works really good, because not all zinc-based ones work good too. You still get burnt. So yeah, sometimes it might take a little bit of trial and error, but the good news is like, once you find that product, because like, again, like I love Native deodorant, but some people, like my sister-in-law, when she used Native, would break out in a rash, because there are some people that might be sensitive to maybe like the essential oils or sometimes the baking soda. So sometimes there are ingredients that you might be
that deodorant thing for me was like, dang, I literally, so I started becoming allergic to deodorants or sensitive deodorants in my early 20s. I tried every last deodorant, natural thing, nothing worked. And I finally found Dr. Mist, which is like Dead Sea salt. And so it doesn't last a long time. So it's like, although no, it's good. But if there's like stress sweat, I'm like, oh dear, I'm like, I gotta reapply. But just regular, I'm like, okay, it's fine. Like you sweat a little bit, but you're not stinky. Right. And then the sunscreen thing that again, in my early 20s, all of a sudden it became like, every sunscreen I use like made my face break out like crazy. So I, for years, trying to search for a sunscreen, and then other ones would give me rashes, all this stuff. So I use Juice Beauty, and it's not like it still will give a little bit of a like a white sheen, but I don't really care. I don't know. I'm just like, I need to have the sunscreen on. Otherwise, I'm just going to get burnt. So
right. Exactly. Yeah. It's definitely better, even if it does make you look a little bit white, it's still better than getting burnt and having the after effects from that too.
Exactly. So. Although we still need to get our vitamin D. As I sit here by this window, I'm like, the vitamin D is coming in at me. So it's all good. Okay. So what are the consequences of not treating estrogen dominance? Just letting it, and actually just to go back to some of the stuff you said there about, the cruciferous vegetables, helping to detox that out, and also like DIM and things like that to help move it out. But sometimes people are doing some of those things and they're like, oh, I think I have it. So it's like self-diagnosing, right? That's why the test don't guess thing really helps. So then you can target it, move it out, and start to see some change. So so what are you seeing there of the consequences of not treating it?
And that's a really good point too, because there is a lot of information, and of course on Google, it's like estrogen dominance, take DIM, but not everyone needs DIM. And actually there are some women that will take DIM and get worse because they don't need it. And that's why, like you said, it's so important to test, not treat, because then we can look at those different pathways. And if your first metabolite, the 2-hydroxyestrone, is really, really high, you don't need DIM, just continue to eat cruciferous vegetables to support that pathway, but don't take DIM, because if you do, you might feel worse. And so I like to look at the phase 1, phase 2 metabolite, see where support is really needed, because not all estrogen dominance is treated the same. So looking at those two different pathways, and also recognizing the different patterns of estrogen dominance, because I've noticed 3 different patterns where there's normal levels of progesterone and high levels of estrogen. So I'll see women, like, for example, progesterone optimal range should be 15 to 25. And when I check estrogen, if I see estrogen in the like 200, 300, that's really, really high, especially for being in the luteal phase. Even though there's not really like an optimal range of estrogen, I know like if progesterone's like 15, it's within range, but estrogen is like 250, 300. I'm like, okay, that's a lot of estrogen in the body. So now let's look at how well is your body metabolizing estrogen and support, either phase 1, 2, 3, or just support one of the 2 phases or all 3, so just really looking into that further. And the second estrogen dominance pattern that I'll see is low progesterone with normal estrogen. And then the third is low progesterone and high estrogen. So because if progesterone levels are low, then I also will recommend supporting naturally. I start first with like Vitex, evening primrose, vitamin C, B vitamins, because those are also very important nutrients to help support progesterone levels. But not everyone should be taking Vitex either. So for example, if someone has PCOS and high levels of LH, that can make LH jump up even higher and make your PCOS worse. So you definitely want to be mindful of that. That's why it's important working with a practitioner, having them to do the appropriate tests so they can figure out what are the best supplements that you should be taking to really help balance out the hormones, balance out those estrogens, support progesterone. But the consequences of not treating estrogen dominance is the development of these estrogen dominance conditions that I've already mentioned. So some women may already currently have them, like endometriosis, PCOS, uterine fibroids, fibrocystic breast disease. But I do believe like if women don't have them, we can definitely prevent them from happening. But also cancer too, going back to talking about the different types of cancer, not just uterine, breast, endometrial, but also like thyroid, lung, intestinal, even bone, brain cancer, because of those estrogen receptors that are all over our body. So when we think about the development of the cancer, like who's looking at estrogen? No one's really looking at estrogen. Maybe if a woman has breast cancer, but it's important to do the estrogen metabolite test because, like you mentioned, we can look at the 2 metabolites that increase proliferation of those cells and damages DNA, which is going to increase the risk of breast cancer. So if we can see those metabolites are on the higher side, we can actually start taking steps now to really reduce that risk. Because I do believe, if you think about it, most breast cancers, like 90%, is not due to genetics. It's due to our lifestyle environmental factors. And if we can actually look at these estrogen metabolites, I do believe we can prevent a lot of those cancers from developing.
I agree. And the sign of constipation too, where you're not being able to eliminate the toxins, they're just circulating. I see so many people with like going once or twice a week where it should be 1 to 3 times a day. And so when you're not, we're not releasing that. So there's always like these healing opportunities. There's always like signs that we think, oh, wait, I've always been constipated, or wait, I've always had anxiety, all these different signs in the body where those are clues to dig deeper. And, we're dealing here with fertility. So there's always things to optimize your fertility. Your body wants to procreate.
I did want to mention one more thing too, going back to like gut health and the dysbiosis, there are bacteria that release toxins called lipopolysaccharides. And so these toxins, especially if you have a leaky gut, they cross through the intestinal barrier and they get absorbed into our bloodstream, and they also activate our immune system. So a lot of people can also develop autoimmune disorders as well as a result of this. And then when these LPS toxins are in our bloodstream, they go to different organs, especially the uterus. And I was actually looking at a study that showed there was a link between LPS and endometriosis. So
here's my lunch.
I know.
Thanks, darling.
So yeah, it was crazy because I'm like, if someone has these toxins in their gut and it's going to their bloodstream and it's going to the endometrium and it's like contributing to endometriosis. I'm sure that's impacting fertility too. So this is another reason why it's so important to get your gut health checked, because, you know, in regular Western medicine, they're not thinking, oh, gut's impacting fertility, but it really could be because of this factor. So I thought it was really fascinating and does make sense. And as more and more research come out, I'm excited to see what other things that we learn that could be impacting fertility. But at the end of the day, we have to just, you know, go to start with the basics, look at what we're eating, optimize our gut health, make sure we're going to the bathroom every day, reducing the toxic burden, managing stress, like making sure we have all these, you know, pieces to really help optimize our health and keep our hormones balanced.
I agree. So let's just talk a little bit about the pill. So, and I think like we see, so when I asked someone, why did you go on the pill? And I was on it as well. So basically at the age of whatever it was, 18 or 19, went on, you know, I had heavy periods at the time, but the main reason I went on it was acne. I had great skin in my teens, not one freaking zit at all. All of a sudden in my late teens, early 20s, I'm like, what is going on? All on my chin. Then it was like cystic acne, not bad, but any kind of acne. I just want to put a bag on my head and like, whatever, you know, you're just like, oh my God, everyone's looking at this pimple.
Yes.
Nobody cares, by the way. So I went to my doctor for line of defense. Hey, Sarah, go on the pill. So I went on the pill, and then, so my periods were irregular at that point. And then I was on the pill because I wanted to have my kids at 28. I wanted to get married at 28, 25, which I did. I wanted to have my kids at 28, big planner, and came off. And that's when I was diagnosed with premature ovarian insufficiency. Not to say that you go on the pill and that's what happens, but for me, the underlying issues weren't addressed. And it was interesting. My daughter, who's 20, comes to me, you know, she's like, she's got a bit of acne and she's dairy and gluten-free. And I've talked about all this stuff and she knows what to do. And then I said, okay, fine. We'll go to the doctor. We'll see what he says. Cause her periods were getting very heavy. And I'm like, well, maybe your diet is not as clean as you think it is. And, you know, a few other things, you know, she's in university, she's drinking, whatever. First thing he said is, you should go on the pill. And she looks over at me and I'm like, see, but that didn't address any of the underlying issues. So most people that I speak to with dealing with fertility issues, it wasn't for prevention. It was for PMS, heavy periods, acne. They might've been put on Accutane, all sorts of other underlying things. And then here we are years later, we come off the pill and the issue is still there. And in this case, we're dealing with fertility issues. So what's I've had Dr. Jolene Brighton on the podcast. She's amazing. Her book, Beyond the Pill, and talking all about how the pill can then, you know, deplete our, it predisposes us to food sensitivities, gut infections, and malabsorption. You eat that beautiful diet, but you're not absorbing all the nutrients. So we see this all the time, but what's your take on the pill and estrogen dominance and fertility?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you interviewed her because she got me thinking. I read her book Beyond the Pill too, which is why I finally came off the pill because of that book opened my eyes to what was happening in my body. But you're so right. Like a lot of the times, like the pill is just a Band-Aid. It actually silences a lot of the symptoms and issues that women are having because it suppresses all our hormones. And unfortunately, you know, because those things aren't addressed, when you come off, everything just like it comes back, and sometimes it comes back even worse. And in my case, like I was always regular, I had mild cramps, but it wasn't anything that was like debilitating or anything like that. But when I came off for the first time, I had irregular cycles, and, you know, the cramps were actually pretty bad. And then the breast tenderness, and I was like, and then the weight gain too. And I was like, whoa. So with birth control, I'm like, I think it's a matter of just like, you know, really learning like what are the long-term impacts it has on the body. And so definitely read her book. It's a great resource. Another thing that I realized, like it was impacting my gut health. And that makes sense why I started developing a lot of constipation bloating in my 20s, because I had started it in high school for acne as well. And And it actually, studies are now coming out and showing that it does impact the gut lining, the intestinal barrier, and that is linked to leaky gut. In fact, studies also show it's like linked to the development of autoimmune disorders like Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, because again, if you have that leaky gut, things are passing through and it's triggering the immune system, and it's just, really just impacting that gut barrier. So studies are also showing that it's causing gallbladder issues and gallbladder disease. And it's crazy because I've had a couple clients that were on birth control and were having gallbladder issues. And I remember one telling me that she asked her doctor, is birth control, should I be on birth control with this gallbladder? And they're like, no, it's fine. I'm like, but you have you have a gallbladder issue while on birth control. And there's studies saying that if you have gallbladder issues, you should not be taking birth control. And that's because it does contribute to estrogen dominance as well, imbalanced estrogens. And studies show that it actually, the birth control suppresses the liver's ability to produce bilirubin, and bilirubin is what is necessary to produce bile, and bile is what we need to bind those inactive estrogens as they go through phase 2, so it can go to the intestines and be eliminated. So if that process is not happening, we're not producing enough bilirubin to produce enough bile to bind those inactive estrogens, that process isn't happening. So it's really important that we are aware of like these long-term effects, like impacting the gut health, suppressing our hormones, and also the birth control increases sex hormone binding globulin as well. And I know Jolene talks about this in her book. And this happened to me when sex hormone binding globulin increases, it binds up our testosterone. So I was also experiencing a lot of hair loss and low libido, and that I had to do a lot of work to get my testosterone back up. And it's not like an immediate thing that happens either. So I had to take a lot of like saw palmetto, stinging nettle, just to really help boost my testosterone, even though I was active and lifting weights, because that's like one of the ways to help boost our testosterone. But I had to do a lot of things to really help support that and get testosterone back up again. And some women, it can actually take a very, very long time, or sometimes it doesn't recover, which is unfortunate. And then they need like testosterone replacement therapy. But yeah, these are the long-term things that are happening in our body that women need to be aware of. So when it comes to, if you are having symptoms of hormonal imbalance, speak with a practitioner that's aware of, especially like a functional medicine or naturopathic practitioner that's aware of these hormonal imbalances and different things that are impacting that, because they have more awareness instead of just resorting to the pill. Because I'd rather you do everything that you can to bring these hormones back into body, and then say, if you've done every single thing that you can and you still aren't better, then use the pill as a last resort. But I'd rather you try everything that you can, because most of the time you're going to balance out those hormones and you're not even going to need the pill.
Exactly. Not needed. Yeah. Use the fertility awareness method, get one of those trackers and do it that way.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what I've been using the last 2.5 years. And I want to say it works. So if you do it and you do it to a T, it works.
Yep. Daisy, Ava, just even using another like just an app too, a free app. You can do that. Kandara. Okay. What about, and so things to sort of your top 3 things to help with estrogen dominance. What are those?
Yeah. So I definitely recommend look at start with nutrition. So focus on consuming a lot of those cruciferous vegetables, a lot of leafy greens, increasing your fiber. So not just the leafy greens, but also lots of vegetables, beans, nuts, and seeds. Now, if you find that you are sensitive to some of these foods, definitely you want to make sure you get gut testing and food sensitivity tests, because there's inflammation in the body. And once you balance that out, you'll be able to eat these foods again. But because when I first started out, I was eating a lot of cruciferous vegetables, and that was contributing to my bloating and gas. But thankfully, and that also goes back to the SIBO. So yeah, these foods are important, and also fermented foods to help with those probiotics. But if you feel worse eating these foods, that's the number one sign to really go and get the gut checked and those food sensitivities as well. But those are the main foods you really want to focus on. So if you actually feel good eating these foods, consume those foods, reduce or actually focus more on the organic as much as possible. So thankfully, Environmental Working Group has their Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. So if you can't get everything organic, at least focus on the Clean 15 You can get those non-organic, and then the dirty dozen, get those organic. And also meat, make sure it's good. If you do consume meat, make sure it's good quality source of meat, no antibiotics and hormones. Fish, make sure it's wild caught. And then, so yeah, definitely focus on the nutritional aspect, reducing the toxins in your body. So again, using those resources. And, I don't expect everyone to clean everything out of their home, just start swapping one thing out at a time, and over a period of time, before you know it, you will have everything that is, non-toxic in your home. So starting with those things, and then also reducing the stress too, as I talked about, that's going to be the biggest thing as well. You can start with a simple daily practice like meditation, like, both Sarah and I do every morning, is just, even if it's just like 10-15 minutes, I'm sure everybody can squeeze in 10-15 minutes of meditation every day. And, when I also too, like, I'm usually pretty good, but if I go on like vacation or something, I may not be as irregular with my practice. And it's crazy because you'll feel it. You'll feel the difference when you're not doing it versus when you do. Even if it's just 10-15 minutes, it does make a huge difference in your day and how you show up, and you're more calmer as well. And you're able to manage stress a lot better. So starting with a simple daily practice such as meditation, or even deep breathing. So if you don't want to do meditation, you can do deep breathing. I also love yoga as well. So I'll integrate that with the gym. So I'll go to the gym like 3 times a week and do yoga 3 times a week, because I also love yoga to help ground me, and it helps me to connect back to my body, my breath as well. So that's another great way to really help reduce stress in the body. But yeah, those are the biggest top 3 things that I feel like everybody should focus on. That is pretty simple. So, focusing on the nutrition, reducing the pesticides, and also swapping out the different products that you're using in your home to reduce the toxic burden, and then managing stress.
Love it. I love it. Great tips. Awesome. Okay. So they can go to, I'm gonna have a link in the show notes where they can go and get a free PDF of your new book, Estrogen Is A Bitch. And so they can download the full book there. So make sure you check that out. Where's the book? I'm just going to get it. It's over here.
Yeah. Yeah, because
book. So definitely read it. It's awesome. So yeah, it basically gives you like a whole guide to the things that we were talking about, in a little more of a deeper dive, obviously. So I'll have that link in there. Is there anything you wanted to say? Final thoughts on this subject? It's a massive topic. We could talk for hours, but
I know there's so much. And the reason why I wrote the book is because I realized, like, not a lot of women are aware of estrogen dominance, what it is, the different things that contribute to that. And so that's why I wrote the book, Estrogen's a Bitch. And not just necessary to say that estrogen really is a bitch. It's a bitch when it's imbalanced. Because we do need estrogen. Estrogen is a really important hormone. In fact, I call it the Goldilocks hormone, like not too little and not too much. We want just the right amount of estrogen, and then everything in our body is working optimally and efficiently as it should. So definitely highly recommend check it out. Like Sarah said, you do get the free PDF version of my book, which is awesome. So you can read through everything, a deeper dive. But yeah, my goal is to really help empower, educate women, to provide them with this knowledge about their bodies and the steps that they can take, and really just take back control of their health again, because, there's just so much out there, and I want to make sure that they have the right information that they need. And even if, even if it's just to get started, and then find a practitioner to work alongside with them to really take things to the next level.
Hope you can't hear my stomach grumbling. There's this soup that's right here, and I was like, oh my God, I'm starving. Kate, this was like so awesome. Thank you so much. It was really like informative, and I love your passion around this topic, and I'm excited for people to learn more, and definitely to get a copy of your book, Estrogen Is a Bitch. And thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today, Sarah.